Greetings. Welcome to Spiritual Warriorship Seminar. I'm thankful to be back with you. I had a nice trip to Washington, D.C., and I'm back. And I want to greet all of you who are there. And let's see, we're going to go on an adventure tonight because I wanted to start something new today, but because of traveling and all, I didn't get to it. And I had to learn not to beat myself up. But this is what we're going to do. First of all, again, I welcome everyone. And we know that this is spiritual warriorship. And we're discussing subjects from Spiritual Warriors books by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami. There's 6 spiritual warrior books, and there are others, Reflections to Beggars. But we want to discuss aspects that can help us become strong spiritual warriors. Before I forget, I also mentioned that the 6 spiritual warrior books you can buy at Krishna.com, and there's a biography of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami called Black Lotus. And you can get that also. And this way you really get a sense of who this wonderful, wonderful personality was and is in our lives. So what I thought I would do is, now you all excuse me, I'm on medication and my mouth gets dry, so just a moment. Okay, I want to review, and I'm going to review from what we started, where we started. Spiritual Warrior 3, Solace for the Heart in Difficult Times. And usually we read what he says about spiritual warriors. And I hope we have some warriors out there, or the desire to be. Let's hear what he says in this introduction of Spiritual Warrior 3. He says that spiritual warriors are unconventional, to say the least. We do not fight with conventional weapons. We do not fight on conventional battlegrounds. And we do not fight for conventional objectives. Goes on to say that many wars in human history have had some religious overtones, but a closer look generally reveals that the combatants are actually more interested in some political or territorial gains. That land, a body of land, a body of water, even space in the sky. You fly over my space, can you imagine? But this goes on. He says, in these cases, religious differences are simply held out as banners, like race, gender, or class, to minimize the humanity of others and justify unjustifiable actions. Spiritual warriors have nothing to gain by such exploits. We see that the assets and power these groups fight so viciously for are transitory and do not bring true happiness. Because isn't that so? If they gain this much land, they want more land, and they keep going. And it's all temporary. Why? Because these material bodies are temporary, and after all that fighting and many people being killed, they will be gone and that land will still be there. He says there is a difference between religion and spirituality. Religion can play an important role in our development of spiritual understanding, but it can also promote divisions and sectarianism. Whether we follow the Bible, the Torah, Quran, or the Vedas, we must recognize that true spiritual pursuits seek the common ground between all things and all beings, and this is developed by a careful study of all of the ancient wisdom we have available to us. The true spiritual warrior strives to master the weapons of love, humility, compassion, faith, and self-knowledge. Our battleground is the realm of human consciousness, where we wage war against the ignorance and lust that now pervade human society like an occupying army. Our objective is a civilization where people live in harmony with each other and with God, awakened and in tune with the effulgent spiritual environment that is available to us. Toward these ends, we endeavor to develop ourselves and share our understanding with the people we meet, giving them the tools they need to discover and experience the truth for themselves. And we can't do that at all unless we have the tools and have worked with the tools and have seen how they manifest in our life and help us. Then we can help others. He tells us that spiritual warriors seek to heal and nourish relationships, first by learning to identify and honor the true self, then learning to recognize the God essence in ourselves and everyone in our environment. So we must fortify ourselves with spiritual knowledge and put that knowledge to practice. They say practice makes perfect. And we're given the opportunity to do that every day that we awaken and put our feet on the ground and face the world. We have an opportunity to do that and to express our spiritual knowledge. Because when we put that knowledge to practice, we will have the experience, and then we are capable of helping others. So what I feel to do today, let's review, if you have been with us, the 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. Because if we imbibe these qualities and express them in our lives, our environments will change and we can live up to what Bhakti Tirtha Swami has stated. I'm going to go back to chapter 7 in Spiritual Warrior 3, 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. And what I'd like to put out, I don't see the chat room when I'm exchanging with you. My young ladies here, they get the messages as they come in, or questions. And what I would like for, as you hear these qualities, and as I read through them, if you have used them, if you have imbibe them, practice them in any way since hearing these broadcasts, if you've been a fairly regular listener, and have noticed had any experience, I would like you to share it. I'm still endeavoring to not feel, I don't know what word to use. I love face-to-face exchanges. And of course we're having that, but I cannot see your reactions. So the chat room is there, hopefully, for those who are there to hear the spiritual warriorship discussion. And if any time you want to ask a question, please do so. Or if you have had some experience with any of the techniques, technologies, tools that have been presented to you over the past few weeks. So we're dealing with spiritual warriorship. And I'm going to just read what he has said on that. On first hearing, some gentle souls are put off by the notion of spiritual warfare. The phrase seems contradictory. Can a true spiritualist be violent? Spiritual warfare is rarely violent in the literal sense. But spiritualists must consciously resist the aggressive attacks and covert influences that want to warp their identity. A true spiritualist must engage in battle, if only to avoid being consumed by the avalanche of ever-increasing impiety and materialism that is quickly engulfing the world. True spiritualists must engage in battle or be cheated of our spiritual inheritance. So this means being mindful, being alert and aware of what's attacking us, what's coming at us, and knowing that we must battle it. But don't forget, he's told us what the weapons are for a spiritual warrior. Our real identity is that we are eternal beings. And this he has stressed through all the readings. We must know who we are. That is the spiritual knowledge that we must put into practice, imbibe, and understand so that we can see others and help others. Our real identity is that we are eternal beings. And it is important to think and act as eternal beings. We must remember that each person plays a part in the universal energy of the planet. We can choose to do something positive and make some serious changes in the world, or we can sit back waiting, becoming a product of increasing aggression and violence in this material world. What do you choose? What would you choose? To live a truly non-violent life, we must understand and imbibe the characteristics of a spiritual warrior. If you are going to embark on a spiritual mission, especially in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, you must hone the art of spiritual warrior. How? How do you hone that? Through sincere study and application. And this is what I'm asking for those of you that have been with us a while, or maybe those who are just joining us and you know of these spiritual qualities of a spiritual warrior. Let us know how you have applied it in your everyday life. Because he says our goal, his goal as the author, is to give you the tools you need to prepare yourself for the 21st century. If you feel the tools are for you, then use them. Make them yours. If you feel the tools are not for you, file them away. But please realize that humankind is in a precarious situation. We must realize that we are in a warlike situation and learn how to protect ourselves. We must know how to improve our resistance and how to combat negative influences, or we will become susceptible to attacks. If you are ready to integrate all your departments of knowledge into one single force for righteousness, then you have heard the call to warriorship. If you're not yet ready to carry the torch of a full-time spiritual warriorship, we wish you success in all your encounters, and know the tools we are giving will still greatly benefit you. So what are those tools? He says the spiritual warrior checklist, which we're going to go over. Consider the following list to be your official spiritual checklist, and do not leave home without it. This list supplies attributes you can aspire to and a barometer to measure your progress. Use this checklist to see where you stand in your spiritual warriorship. Pay close attention to each item and honestly evaluate your mastery of them. Vigilant application of spiritual warfare may prove to be our very lifeline as our planet is gradually overtaken by negative forces. Each item is critical to the success of your endeavors. So by all means, do not take this checklist too lightly, because as with any battle, the unarmed opponent is bound to meet with destruction. After preliminary listing, each item will be discussed in greater detail. Now, I would love to say, who remembers any of the qualities? See your hand go up and answer. And for those who haven't heard it before, we will repeat. These are the 12 qualities, and then we will discuss them and give Bhaktitirtha Swami's comments. Number 1, sense control and mastery of the mind. Number 2, humility. 3, fearlessness. 4, truthfulness. 5, compassion and pridelessness. 6, material exhaustion and disinterest in material rewards. 7, no idle time. 8, patience and selflessness. 9, firm faith. 10, perseverance. 11, curiosity and enthusiasm to learn and grow. 12, surrender to divine will. Any of these your favorite? Any of these you've worked with? Any of these you really want to hear in depth? Let me know. Any questions? You have one? Okay.
There's no question yet, but I wanted maybe go over truthfulness.
Truthfulness. All right. Truthfulness is number 4. Humility. Okay, truthfulness. Truthfulness. We should be so fixed and steady in our realization of the Supreme God and in our love and our compassion for others that we can speak truth even to an enemy. Spirituality is a realm of its own. Thus, the spiritualist functions under different laws than the materialist. For instance, the law of spiritual mathematics. The law dictates that depleting our supply of spiritual merits, if we give our spiritual thoughts and deeds away, we actually increase our supply. This is especially true in aligning ourselves with truth. The more we speak, behave, and live truthfully, the more truth will enter into our existence. And this should be understood if we begin knowing who we are. He tells us at the very beginning we are eternal beings and we have eternal actions. And this way, when we know the difference between the material and the spiritual, we are fearless and we can speak the truth. He says here, however, we should not become self-righteous or demeaning in our delivery. We should also try to give the truth in a way that will elevate whoever hears it. That is real warfare. Because as we come down to someone else's lower level, we allow ourselves to be defeated. When we engage in proper spiritual combat, we are not only trying to avoid becoming a casualty, but we also want to do something that will help elevate others. In that way, more souls have a chance to become free and move on. Today, the world community is severely depleted of wisdom. One reason for this is that people do not compete with a sense of honor or a sense of respect for themselves and their opponents. They constantly cheat in combat, whether this is in the mental or physical arena. Few people fight fairly, and even if someone does defeat another fairly, the defeated party wants to bribe the judge, challenge the decision, or discredit the opponent. This behavior actually reduces the collective storehouse of knowledge and respect. Rather than exchanging techniques and wisdom with one another, we have become petty and unscrupulous, bringing about an overall stagnation in world progress. This is unfortunate. The best antidote for this problem is truthfulness coupled with humility, which is the second of our qualities, humility. We should truly admit defeat if defeated, then earnestly work to better ourselves. We should give credit where it is due and sincerely try to help others in all circumstances. This will restore truth to the planet and create an environment of mutual trust and progress. The next tool is important in developing that mood of truly helping others. So if you are fixed, as I like to remember, fixed and steady in your realization of the Supreme and in your love and compassion for others, then you can speak truth even to an enemy. Anybody want to hear any other? No? Nobody's feeding back? Are you hearing out there what's going on?
There are separate questions.
There's separate questions? Apart from this, what I'm reading?
That
We'll ask later, yeah. Unless you're working with me on these qualities, we'll hold the questions until the end, when we get to the end. Okay, well, we just mentioned how important humility is in being truthful. Let's hear about humility. How's that? It says, in this age, people view humility as a sign of weakness. But the reality is that humility is a powerful weapon. Society considers humility as the position of the conquered towards the conqueror, instead of seeing it as a positive power. We must rediscover the pure strength of humility. The Bible says, the pure in heart shall see God, and the meek shall inherit the earth. This is the opposite of society's opinion. Society views a meek person as someone who gets abused, exploited, and denied because they do not push their case. We must realize the Bible emphasizes that the meek shall be victorious. It does not say the foolish or the naive, but the meek. In meekness or humility, there is strength, focus, and some idea of a mission or purpose. We pursue that mission or purpose with determination, without ego, without distraction, without any obfuscation, confusion, or bewilderment. Too many things in the environment will distract a person when there is excessive ego. Something in the environment will cause a state of imbalance, and the person will feel they have to act to rectify the situation. So much of a person's energy is drained in this way. A lack of humility inevitably causes undue and excessive responses to situations around you. These are easy things to talk about, but it can be difficult to change, because in this age we are conditioned to respond quickly to whatever someone says or does. How come you said that to me? I don't like what you said. I don't like the way you looked at me. And we're all ready to jump. Whereas I remember Bhakti Tirtha Swami told her, I don't know if we're talking about this, I had to do with humility. But he says, if someone says, I can't stand your ugly face, he would just say, I'm so sorry that my face disturbs you, rather than wanting to get back at that person. Because usually that's the ego. If someone says something we don't like, we want to jump on them and get even with them. But that doesn't help our consciousness. And that's what we're about, purifying our consciousness and being able to help and serve others. Take a moment, he says, to reflect back on your past week. How many times did you overreact to a situation? Or put yourself in conflict that brought you down to the other person's level? Or allowed someone to involve you in a situation that you did not want to be a part of? Take a moment. Reflect back. Just on this past week. How many times did you overreact to a situation? Or put yourself in conflict that brought you down to the other person's level? Or allowed someone to involve you in a situation you did not want to be a part of? We often get wrapped up in a situation only to realize later we wasted so much valuable time. The spiritual warrior, remember, this is spiritual warriorship, and we're being given tools here and methods and technologies so that we can become a true spiritual warrior. He states that the spiritual warrior never overreacts to fame, success, or position. For while dealing with the many, he does not overlook the one. He or she, this is a spiritual warrior, is always concerned about each person's highest welfare. Humility means knowing there is so much we do not know. So much we still need to learn. And if we can understand that concept, and we see each situation as a learning experience, and as Bhakti Tirtha Swami uses the word so much in, I think it was in Spiritual Warrior Tour, see it as an opportunity. If you're developing these qualities, and these qualities are within all of us, and if a situation arises, it's an opportunity to understand you're an eternal being, and that being humble is a powerful weapon. And then you don't overreact. But it has to be in our consciousness. So much we still need to learn. Humility means knowing that there is a higher part to ourselves and being eager to awaken that part. And what is that part? We said it, eternal beings, the soul within. And what did we say when we're reading Spiritual Warrior 2? The soul is made for love. And that's what we are endeavoring to awaken within ourselves, and knowing it's in others, and we can see it in others. He states, humility means knowing that we are servants of the Supreme, children of God. Unless we become like a child who is lost and confused and calling out to their Father, knowing everything will be fine when Daddy appears, we cannot enter into the kingdom of God. And to have that sense, we must develop a relationship with the Supreme. And we develop that relationship once we accept and imbibe that we are eternal beings. We're part and parcel of that Supreme. And that Supreme loves us and will help us, and we can cry out and know that He is there for us because God is personal and reciprocates to our cry. Children are dependent on the fact that their parents are in control of their well-being. This is humility. Humility means recognizing who is doing the controlling and being dependent on that actual controller. As individuals, we must move aside, let God drive, and become as dependent as that child crying for mommy and daddy. Deliberate and voluntary surrender to the Lord requires great trust, and the next tool helps bring about this surrender. Is there any other quality anybody wants to hear about from what I read?
No one's requesting a specific quality. There's a question. I don't know if it's directly relevant, but kind of it.
Okay.
Should say for the end.
No, let me hear it now.
This is from Dr. Kevin.
Where is Dr. Kevin? Did you
I
say?
forgot to ask.
Okay.
He says, how do I know that I'm following Krishna's will? How do I know that I'm following what Krishna's will actually is versus what I believe or feel Krishna is telling me in my heart?
Okay. How do I know that it's Krishna's will rather than what I'm thinking? Okay.
He's from Sarasota.
Sarasota? Where's that?
Florida.
Florida. Oh, all right. You see? I learned something every day. Hedy bo. In order to understand that more, we need to look at quality number 1, mastery of the mind. Let me work with that and see if that helps your question. If not, we can come back to it, because this is the first quality which will help us with all the other qualities. Mastery of the mind. It's sense control and mastery of the mind. And this is what Bhakti Tirtha says. A spiritual warrior needs a sense of regulation and focus in order to excel. We must be able to regulate our minds. If our minds are scattered, going from one philosophy to another, one religion to another, one job to another, one mate to another, then we need to look inside ourselves. We need to perform self-examination to see where we are weak, because the areas where we are weak are where we will be tested the most. And to Kevin, this self-examination is very important. And what just came to me to say, if what you're doing, you know it'll please Krishna or is pleasing Krishna, then you know it's His will. If what you're doing or saying or acting is not, and you'll know if it will not please Krishna, then of course it's not his will. It's, again, this mind. Listen more to the mind. So we must perform self-examinations to see where we are weak. Because the areas where we are weak, or where we will be tested the most, regulation of the mind and senses cuts down the areas in which we can be attacked. The mind is extremely powerful and can be our greatest friend, or it can be our greatest enemy. The mind knows all our secrets and all our weaknesses. There's truth in the phrase, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. An active, progressive, devotional mind is a place where the Lord can focus and radiate transcendental messages and understanding. Krishna's will be known. It says, I like this, an active, progressive, devotional mind is a place where the Lord can focus and radiate transcendental messages and understanding. An active, progressive, devotional mind. The Lord is in everyone's heart, just waiting to come out. But the mind can block that relationship. Spiritual warriors allow their mind to open the door that will allow the Lord to work through them. The mind has a natural, original focus, just as the bee is naturally drawn to honey. The mind's most important and natural purpose is contemplation of Mother, Father, God, and service to them. That's the mind's most important and natural purpose. Unfortunately, the mind has lost its original purpose and has been diverted by the distractions of material life. A materially conditioned mind is like a machine that has limited programming with which to respond to events and people in its environment. Like any machine, confronted with situation outside its pre-programmed purpose, a conditioned mind will rebel and reject stimuli that are beyond its immediate conscious realm. The mind has many sabotaging qualities and will attempt to rationalize, argue, and put up barriers to ensure that higher cosmic messages do not sneak past and reach the soul. Think of that question of Kevin's. Like I'm feeling the answers coming through here. The mind has many sabotaging qualities and will attempt to rationalize, argue, and put up barriers to ensure that higher cosmic messages, and this is when we're saying we want to do the will of the Lord, and that will of the Lord message will come through, but the mind likes to block it. And it puts up barriers to ensure the higher cosmic message do not sneak past and reach the soul. Our conditioned minds hate change and have a deep fear of being abandoned. That is why the mind does not want the soul to take over. Spiritual warriors must first discover what their mind's habits are and determine whether their mind is acting as a friend or enemy. If you discover your mind is acting as an enemy, as most people do, please do not feel discouraged, beloved. Rather, begin to work on gradually coaxing your mind into realizing that its conditioned tendencies are bringing no real satisfaction, and explain to your mind that true peace will come from cooperating with God and our soul's agenda. And this is possible. I like to remember the time when I was having trouble getting up going to Mangalati. This was a few years ago when I lived at the Gita Nagri at the farm. And at some point I just realized I wanted to go to Mangalati, so I decided to talk to the mind. I said to the mind, I'm going to bed early and I'm getting up at 3:30, I think I said, so I can go to Mangalati, because that's what I want to do. And would you believe it? By morning, without the alarm clock, I woke up, I looked at the clock, I got up, got ready, and I made it to Mangalati. And I did that each night. I'd say to the mind, we're getting up to go to Mangal. And here's you. Listen to what he says here. He says, explain to your mind that true peace will come from cooperating with God and our soul's agenda. In addition to this self-dialogue, help your mind adjust to not being in charge. So many people in this age are ruled by their senses. So many people are spending their lives running after things that are not real, that will disappear or fall apart. It is easy to get caught up in mundane patterns. Most people's lives revolve only around eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's an animal's consciousness. We are divine spirit soul. That's your self-knowledge. Know this, imbibe this, live this. We are divine spirit souls. Why? Because we are part and parcel of the divine supreme. He goes on. We need to cultivate our higher faculties and experience the sublime ecstasy that is every person's right. Controlling our senses and regulating our mind will lay the foundation for being alert spiritual warriors. Otherwise, we're committing violence against ourselves and cannot be of help to others. This is certainly not easy. By deciding to not engage in animal consciousness, you are making a strong statement that you're not going to play into the degradation of this material world. You are making a statement that you are not going to become controlled by your lower senses and give into whatever appeals to them. This is strong, brave. This is a strong, brave stand to take. And as you move toward a higher consciousness, you will receive help. Now he says the first step in regulating our senses and our minds is to look at the quality of our associations. Take a close look at the people you spend your time with, Kevin. Do they make it easy for you to give in to your senses? Perhaps even encourage you to follow your lower senses? The saying, you can tell the character of a man by the quality he keeps, is quite true. Spiritual warriors must either elevate the conscious of the people we associate with, or look for new contacts with people who value God's consciousness as much as we do. You hear that? Or look for new contacts with people who value God's consciousness as much as we do. If a person is an alcoholic, they avoid spending time with people who drink and avoid going to places where alcohol is. People say, of course, that makes sense, that is wise. The principle is the same for spiritual things. If we do not want to live a life where you are ruled by what your senses require, then it is wise to not spend your time with people who are simply serving their senses. This does not mean you have to become an elitist and cut all ties with family and friends. We are simply suggesting that you take a close look at your associations. If they're keeping you locked into a lower consciousness, you need to seriously elevate these relationships. You need to seriously elevate the relationship. Sometimes just fully realizing the damage these relationships are doing can make it possible for you to maintain some level of contact with the person, yet protect yourself from being influenced by their lower consciousness. As you continue to elevate your consciousness, these people will have to make their own choice to elevate their consciousness or get away from you. It will happen naturally. And I could be a witness to that. As I began studying spiritual life more in depth and desiring more to know God and experience God, people just seemed to move out of my life, ones who weren't in the same mind. So when he says it will happen naturally, it will, as long as you continue to elevate your own consciousness. The second step in regulating our senses and our mind is to provide alternatives. For example, when someone stops smoking, it is usually best to find a healthy alternative. Some people will chew gum when they want a cigarette. Some people will go for a jog. Whatever works best for that individual until they reach the point where just the thought of a cigarette disgusts them. This is how a spiritual warrior needs to approach regulating their senses. Do not simply try to cut out all the things that you see are harming you physically, mentally, or spiritually. We need to find alternatives to these things. For example, If you're hanging out with a group of friends and you realize they are simply intoxicating themselves and turning off to higher things, this does not mean you have to cut them off out of your life. This does not mean you have to cut them out of your life and turn to and become a loner. Seek out new friends. Go to a spiritual community and immerse yourself in higher association. Find people with interests along the same line as yours, with goals similar to yours. And even on this, I can say, if this is happening using this method he's offering, sometimes for a period of time you may feel lonely because this crowd isn't following your desire for higher consciousness. But if you're in an understanding that you are a servant of the Supreme, that the Supreme is within your heart, as we've mentioned here, and always with you, then you may be lonely, but you won't feel alone because you are developed that relationship and connection. And through that, you'll be guided. He states the final step is to be accountable to your true self. Do not look away when your actions are destructive to your spiritual self. Be aware of what you think, what you say, what you do, how you interact with people, how you act alone. Be aware of these things. Constantly elevate where you are, constantly evaluate where you are on your spiritual path and where you want to go. The quality of your thoughts and lifestyle will dictate how effective the attack of an intruder will be. If our vibrations are of a higher caliber and we can think lovingly of even our enemies, then we become a fortress and no one will find an avenue to intrude. Being regulated will also provide security against the enemy within ourselves, which we already identified as our materially conditioned minds. Regulation allows us to persevere in good or bad times and allows us to almost spontaneously do what is necessary. Please try to organize your life so that it is simpler and regulated and supported by higher consciousness. This will fortify you to survive spiritual emergencies. Are there any questions or comments on what is read?
I guess there's a couple questions, but they're off topic.
Not on this.
You want to save it for another time?
I would like questions on what we're reading so that we can all learn together. None of it refers to this. Maybe I should practice this fifth one, compassion. Okay, give me one. off topic. Nothing to do with what we've been reading. Nothing. Who's it from?
One is from R.T. Navy Massey.
Who?
R.T. Navy Massey.
R.T. That's Kansas?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't remember what she said. I'm sorry. She's asking, what do you think about birth control and teen pregnancy?
Oh, come on, Cameron, making these faces. Let me say this. There's some questions that I feel need to be spoken with your spiritual mentor, your church person. We are discussing qualities of becoming more spiritual. And I would like to stay with that, if you don't mind. Unless you want to leave your email or something, and I can maybe write to you offline. But what I'd really like to do, I've been reading some very important points for our spiritual growth and development, because as we learn to master the mind and control the senses, you'll even have your own answers to that, and become humble, as we're saying, and truthful. And if we become materially exhausted and interested in material rewards, which are other qualities, you will notice some of the questions you're asking, you have the answers to already. And possibly you know the answer already, and you just want to see if someone agrees with you or not. But I would really like to take questions concerned with these 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior, or some help of becoming a strong spiritual warrior in this day of hypocrisy and all the things, anxiety and distress that's going on. Any other questions related to the discussion? Any comments? Anybody out there? Have you used any of these qualities? Have you experienced anything in your life? Any changes? We've been going through this for a number of weeks. We finished talking about love and lust, and again this week I'm reviewing the qualities that are so important to make us strong spiritual warriors, to be able to deal with the problems of life and to be able to face them with courage and conviction and perseverance. This is important if you're interested in your spiritual life. And that's what I would like to try and keep the questioning and exchanges on that, because it's so important. We have to have curiosity and enthusiasm to learn and grow spiritually. And then when we do that, we're able to surrender to the divine will of the Lord. And all these qualities bring us to that point of surrender. And then the spiritual warrior, as he surrenders, can actually become victorious in whatever appears to be a negative or something that's giving us some problem. These are important qualities to turn our lives around, because life is temporary. Many of the things we're looking at are just transitory. But we need to know who we are, as he says, eternal beings, spirit, soul, and connecting with the Supreme and surrendering to his divine will. And then we can sincerely live a spiritual life and better ourselves and have a wonderful reciprocation with the Lord. And he will reciprocate with us as we do that. And we can pray and ask for help if you're not feeling you having, and he listens to you and he responds, because he's in your heart. He's in everybody's heart. This last paragraph, living a spiritual life means living a natural life. Our natural state is to be surrendered to God's will. But we cannot surrender to God's will without developing the tools of a spiritual warrior. Working with these tools automatically puts us in a different consciousness. Simply reading about the tools puts us in a higher consciousness. We need to evaluate our relationship with God and constantly take inventory to see whether we are catering to our material self or if we're acting in accordance with our understanding of God's will for us. This is not easy to do, but spiritual warriors try their best and always look for ways to do better each day, each situation, each moment. So, we're coming close to our ending time, and any spiritual warriors out there want to I sound like I'm begging you, right? Have you gotten anything from this that you can use? Have you seen any change in your life by hearing? Sometimes hearing is important. And this is to bring us closer to God. So, are there any?
Bandesh says he finds it easier to deal with stress. Dr. Kevin says that these books are nectar and he wants to buy them all.
Great. How many do you have now, Kevin? If any?
I don't know. I personally have found that Maharaj is so good at when he goes through each particular situation, he's so good at accurately. He makes you feel like he really he really understands the situation. And when you read, if you have an issue with humility or this, when you read, you have this feeling of, yes, that's it. He gets it. Okay, I'm. This is normal. I can work from here with this. And then you might then consult Shastra and that, but he puts it in a frame of reference that is it relieves some of the burden, and it doesn't make these issues seem so overwhelming.
Yeah, he does. I'm just fascinated because after I finish here on a Thursday night, I find my next day I'm being more alert, more aware of what's happening in my life and how to make it more spiritual just based on this. He tells us we have to have firm faith. The ninth tool is having firm faith. Faith is necessary in everything. It is not a matter of being Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Muslim, or Buddhist. It's a matter of how much we are following the laws of God and how much faith we have in God's potency. So we need to purify our consciousness so we can develop deep faith. Each thing. A true warrior never wants the war to end. A true warrior is relentless and always ready to continue. We must be prepared to continually evaluate ourselves, regroup, and adopt strategies to help us move beyond what may seem to be defeat. A true test of warriors is how they act when they are wounded. The real spiritual warrior bounces back immediately in the face of defeat. Rather than caving in, the warrior learns from the encounter, imbibes it, owns it, and becomes stronger from the experience. So what he's saying here, this is not going to be a straight path, smooth, every day. Ooh, I'm everything. I'm this. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be difficulties. That's what warfare is about. But this is spiritual warfare. But the test is how we act when wounded, he tells us. The real spiritual warrior bounces back immediately in the face of defeat. Rather than caving in, the warrior learns from the encounter, imbibes it, owns it, and becomes stronger from the experience. That means you have to look at yourself. It's not about pointing fingers. That person who may have been a part of the situation, as he said in the other book, is an opportunity coming to us so we can learn from the encounter, imbibe it and own it, and become stronger from the experience. So these are wonderful points that are being given to us. There will always be temporary setbacks in spiritual life. But the real test is how we continue to move ahead. Even though spiritual warfare is seldom an easy path, the joy and love that we receive serve as the spiritual warrior's rations. Further, our joy and love creates positive energy that brings more joy and love, and the cycle will continue and intensify as we persevere. There is joy in spiritual combat because it creates a tremendous vibration of purification. We have to remember that our spiritual activities are not confined within our consciousness, our family, or our immediate environment. Spiritual energy has an extremely powerful way of permeating and affecting the environment. People are uplifted and rejuvenated by the positive energy of a spiritual warriors association. We must endeavor to keep moving forward and not be detained, and constantly renew our commitment to serving the Lord on the battlefield of consciousness raising. If you don't have these books or have this book, Spiritual Warrior 3, Solace for the Heart in Difficult Times, as I said, they're on sale at Krishna.com store. Do try to get them and study, because during this time of things happening, we need to have this kind of energy and finding the joy in spiritual combat. And I hope some of you out there have taken these and are using them and manifesting them in your lives. And if there are no more questions or comments, we'll say Hare Krishna, good night, Hare Bo. See you next